I love people who have deep convictions and who really live according to them. And people with deep convictions, like they're inspiring. And a lot of times they do call us higher, and they really challenge our perspective. And I would imagine a lot of you guys probably have some deep convictions, and we don't always have like the same ones. And the thing we need to be aware of is that people with deep convictions can also just lead other people to uh, adopt their convictions, or potentially feel like ashamed if we don't adopt their convictions. So this might be anything from like one person's Sabbath routine, and somebody's like, "Oh, and like the Sabbath is awesome." And people have different convictions about what should and shouldn't happen on the Sabbath. And you might hear somebody talk about what they do on the Sabbath and think like, "Oh my gosh, that's amazing. I don't do that on the Sabbath. I have to." And so you grab their Sabbath conviction. And some people, I talked to someone recently and they said, "I only read one book a year besides the Bible. Besides that, like it's only the Bible." And I'm like, "Oh man." And he kind of talked about how he got there. And there's point it's like, "Oh, I read a lot of other books besides the Bible." There's some people who might be like, "Oh, I don't listen to secular music. I only listen to Christian music, or I only listen to worship music." And there's different people's convictions on alcohol. And there's people who are like so deeply convicted and so convinced that like they should not drink alcohol. There's people who might be like, "I only buy clothes from factories that have kombucha on tap for their highly paid employees, who work in an incredibly encouraging environment." And I've heard people talk about they'll only buy certain clothing brands, certain this, because of how people are treated. And like, there's part of that that's really inspiring, but this thing can also happen where like if we have to adopt every person's deep conviction about everything, um, we create a new version of the law. And that is not what we want. And in particular, um, as leaders, you need to be aware of how you communicate your convictions to other people, and to be careful that you don't end up in a place where you you kind of coerce people into adopting your convictions in order to receive your approval. My hope is, and like the people who walk in deep conviction in a healthy way, is like those things are usually birthed in relationship with Jesus, relationship with people, and they're motivated by love and a passion for Jesus, for others, for health, things like that. And it usually takes a process to get to a point where we actually adopt deeply held convictions and come at them from a healthy place. Um, if we become people who hand out our convictions and place them on people, rather than leading them into the relationships and the love in which those convictions get formed, we become like the Pharisees. And the people that we place those convictions on will likely end up in shame or disconnection or legalism. So I'll give you an example of something that I saw happen. Okay. So music can be a hot button issue. I remember um, back in the day, like when I was in high school and stuff, there'd be like, these people getting really passionate about we should only listen to Christian music. And there were people like breaking CDs and smashing CDs. And I know you guys have never owned a CD in your life, but it was this thing. And it's like, yeah, do you love Jesus enough to break all your CDs? Um, and recently I heard some leaders talking, and they were like, "Yeah, I just told my guys about the fact that like they shouldn't be listening to secular music because of this, and this is the impact it has." And I'm sitting there and I'm thinking like, "Oh no." Um, and so we had this conversation, and I'm like, "All right, how did you get this conviction that you should only listen to Christian music?" And then they told a story of like the impact that certain secular music had had on their lives, and I was like, "Okay, I get it. It's probably a good idea for you to only listen to Christian music right now." The other way you could do this is you could share about your journey and give people the freedom to choose and to seek the Lord on where they need to stand on things. So for me, um, I used to love 90s secular hip hop music. I mean, I grew up listening to it. It was just like fun for me. Um, and this was probably about 10 years ago. We're playing Settlers of Catan at my house. I have this 90s hip hop station, and I've kind of got this thing in my mind where I'm like, "Oh, well, I have explicit lyrics turned off, so it's fine." And we're just like sitting there playing, and I'm listening to the music, and I'm just like, "Huh, this is pretty awful." And I would find myself during the day just like having these lines in my head that are just like incredibly unhealthy in the way that they view like women and people and relationships. And I was just kind of like, you know what? This actually isn't good for my soul. And so I decided to stop listening to it. I was like, okay, yep, I just recognize I'm not telling everyone you should never listen to this, but I'm like, for me, I know that what it does to me isn't good, and it doesn't actually put my mind and my heart in the place that I want it to be. You could listen to it and have no problems at all and be totally fine. Uh, and that's something that you need to come to with the Lord. Um, the way I've heard this talked about to give you some terminology is like to be descriptive and not prescriptive. So descriptive is like, let me tell you my journey and how I got to the place that I am. Prescriptive is like you're writing a prescription, like a doctor that says, this is what you need to take if you're going to be healthy. This is what you need to do. And I'll go back to one of the major premises that we've discussed a few times is we want to lead people to the tree of life. We want to lead people to Jesus and to his presence where they can find their own convictions, where they can find life. Um, and they can be led into deep relationship with him, not being led into just the methods that we've used. Now, there is a place, there is a time for sharing some things that you've discovered along the journey. Hey, here's something that I found is really helpful for me. Maybe you want to try it, maybe you don't. But you need to ask yourself, if this person doesn't adopt your conviction, A, are they going to feel like they are still accepted and loved by you? B, are they actually accepted and loved by you? Is there a part of you that's going to sit in judgment towards other people if they don't adopt the same convictions that you do? This is a challenging one because a lot of those convictions, once again, are maybe because they're attached to values that you have or a journey that you've walked, and it's something that's really important to you. But are other people still free to choose? You can make suggestions if you're discipling somebody. If you see, like, hey, can I tell you that I've noticed there's this thing in your life and I think that it's actually having a bad impact? Can I tell you what I'm seeing? And maybe you consider if this is a healthy thing for you or not. That is like good. Once again, I am never going to advocate for passivity and for avoiding hard conversations. Okay. But I am going to advocate for making sure that the heart of where we're coming from is leading people into deeper relationship with Christ, leading them to the tree of life, not to the tree of good and evil. What you're doing is wrong. Don't do it. You need to stop. It's like, no, is what you're doing actually facilitating the kind of loving relationship that you want with the Lord and with the people around you? And if not, I would challenge you to maybe reconsider some stuff. So you set people free to love and pursue Christ and to love and to pursue his kingdom and to develop their own convictions that are birthed out of a pure desire and a love for Christ and his kingdom. Because the reality is, you're only going to be in these people's lives for a little while. And if the only thing that they learn how to do is adopt the convictions of the leader who's in front of them, what are you setting them up for next? Teach them to consider, to think, to pray, to come to the Lord, and to decide what are the convictions and what are the values that they want to live their lives according to.